All right, example 5 is a big one. We're going to first construct this diagram given all of these data points, and then we'll use our diagram to find probabilities. But first we got to construct it. So we have 40 families who were surveyed about the places they went on the weekends. They had choices of, or they went to the circus, which is the C circle, the museum, which is M, and the park, which is P. So they give us 7 different bullet points here. And while you can start at the top or whichever one they first give you, if you do that, you might have to end up doing some erasing later. So what I try to do is I try to focus on, similar to the subset problem, look for the smallest piece, not the smallest number, but the smallest piece of your diagram. And what I mean by that for an overlapping Venn diagram is see if there's anything that talks about people who went to all 3 or to where all of your circles overlap. And in this case, they give us that 4 families went to all 3 places. So I'm going to stick that 4 right in the middle. All right, next, I'm going to go down the line from there. So 7 families went to both the circus and the museum, but not the park. So 7 families went to the circus and the museum, right? So circus and museum would be this whole piece, but they didn't go to the park. So they're already withdrawing the park information. So that means this 7 can be plopped right into this section. Next, we have 3 families went to both the circus and the park, but not the museum. So the circus and the park means, again, we're looking at this intersection, but they didn't go to the museum. So very similar to the 7, this 3 can just get plopped right into that piece. Finishing down the line, and then I'll jump back to the top, 1 family went to the park only. So they only went to the park. They didn't go anywhere else. So starting back at the top, this is where it gets tricky. And it gets tricky because when they say 16 families went to the circus, what they're saying is this entire circus circle, 16 families are in that. So if you notice, I already have 7, 11, 14 families accounted for here that went to the circus and the museum, or the circus and the park, or all 3. So when I go to put that 16 somewhere, I'm going to have to take out these people who are already spoken for. So these 14 people need to be subtracted out of those 16. So that means there's only 2 left that went to only the circus. When I go to look at the 22 families that went to the museum, if I think about it in the same kind of way, I actually don't have enough information yet to figure out then who went only to the museum or who went to the museum and the park but not the circus to fill in this gap. So I'm actually going to skip down to these 14 families who went to the park. And I can do that because within the park circle, I have 3 of the 4 sections already filled out, similar to what I had with the circus circle. So when I look at the park circle, I have 7, 8 families already accounted for. Subtracting that out of the 14 total families that went to the park, that means only 6 went to the museum and the park, but not the circus, so filling in this section. Now I have enough information to figure out how many families went to only the museum. So I know, again, the whole museum circle is 22, but I've already accounted for 10, 17 of those. So that means 5 families went to only the museum and nowhere else. So you need to really be careful, especially when they just say they did this. If they're not specific, like these couple of bullet points at the bottom, they went to these places, but not that place. What that means is they're talking about the entire circle in addition to whatever else may be already in the diagram. All right, so the final piece to this, remember, we were talking about 40 total families. So if I add up what I have here, I have 9, 14, 24, 28 families here. So that means 12 families are not accounted for out of those original 40. You always have to go back if they give you the total number of pieces you're looking at, which they usually do. You always have to go back to it and see, are there any leftovers from your circles that weren't accounted for in your circle? That it might be additional, clearly, there are additional families that were surveyed that didn't go to any of these 3 places. So that 12 that we're talking about that are left over needs to go on the outside of our circles, but still within our universal set rectangle. All right, so now we're going to use our Venn diagram, which I've transferred over all of the numbers, and we're going to find these probabilities. So we're finding the probability that a family went to the circus. So we're looking at not being specific here at all, just the total circus circle, or looking back to our original problems. We can also see that 16 families went to the circus, so you can use it either way. But I'm looking at 16 out of the total 40 families. Again, either fraction or better, simplified fraction of 2/5 or decimal of 0.4. Really, it should just be those last two. But again, they're asking for probability, not a percentage. Letter B, the probability that a family went to 2 or more places. So either 2 or 3 places. We're looking at these overlapping pieces. So our center kind of triangle there. So we're looking at a total of 10, 20 people out of the 40. So 1/2 or 0.5. Part C, the probability that they went to the park or the circus, but not the museum. So park or circus, that means we're looking at the union of the park and circus circles, but they're specifying that they did not go to the museum at all. So what we want to do is we still want to look at the park and circus circles, but instead of continuing up and including my museum, I'm steering clear of that. So we're looking at 2, 3, 6 families out of 40, or 3 out of 20, or 0.15. And finally, part D, probability that they went to the museum, given that they also went to the circus. So this is the same way as writing it as museum given circus. So again, that means I'm always going to look at my first. Out of the circus families, so out of my circus circle, which remember we already said was 16, how many people also went to the museum? And we're looking at these 11 people. So 11 out of 16, or 0.6875. Or if you wanted to do 3 sig figs, 0.688. All right, so kind of moral of the story is mark it up. Mark up your Venn diagram as much as you need to. Use different colors, use different shadings if you don't have different colors, but mark it